couple of things there if you need. Topic tonight is how to program the matrix, and we're going to look at the 3 points of perspective that one can have while living in this constructive reality. And we'll give it the word matrix as well too. Hello everybody, thank you for joining me with Tea with Mo, lectures on non-duality tonight. I'm once again in the space, in the house. Thank you, Jackie, for bringing in some feminine energy here. It's beautiful. There's all of these boys, you know, so this is the nice balancing. Lovely. Beautiful. All right, so Tea with Mo lectures on non-duality. Most of you have been here before, so you've got a sort of an idea of what this is about. A couple, I'll just explain like a brief history of time, and then we can then move into the actual topic for this evening. So this concept of non-duality would suggest that there's a non-dual sense, so you'd probably have to understand the concept of duality to begin with. The worlds that we live in at the moment, and notice I say worlds rather than world, because you travel between worlds, you know that saying, we're just worlds apart, you know, that sort of thing. So literally you can be worlds apart. So duality is this sense of up and down, good and bad, judgment, right and wrong, black and white. So it's very much what this experience is as a human being, because we have a mind that judges things, and it judges things as good or bad. It has an aversion to discomfort and pain, and it has an attraction to reward and relief. So there's this dualistic nature of the mind, and primarily our human experience is experienced through the mind and then the body, or the body and then the mind, or the body-mind as a complete unit. The challenge with the human experience, it's quite finite. It only lasts a very short period of time, and before you know it, it's over. And that's okay, because if we then started to look at it from a non-dual lens, we'd then maybe consider that this human body is it's a body that maybe something is housed in, or something gets housed, and that maybe that's something that gets housed in this body is something that continues to move beyond this lifetime, and there has been lifetimes then before. So when we start to look at non-dual philosophy, non-dual thinking, non-dual concepts, what we're starting to do is to move away from separation, which is dualistic thinking, dualistic behaviours and dualistic beliefs, to a belief system, behaviour, a life that is based upon oneness, that everything comes from one thing. So there's, many religions that will point us in a direction that suggests that there's a hierarchy maybe of our experiences before, during and after this life. And there may be this one particular type of entity that contains all of the experiences of everything. And maybe that one particular entity that contains all of the experiences for everything is everything. And so if it was everything, then we would be included in that everything. And so that would then mean that our experience that we are having subjectively as a human being at this time and space is actually adding to the experience of the one thing that holds everything. So in a sense, you are God realizing itself, because you're a fractal of God, a fractal of the one creator. And the analogy that we've used many times is if I got a tea light candle and I lit it, and then I got 6 other candles and lit it from the same light and then put them in different areas of the room, they're still the same light, but they're all having a different experience, a different perspective of the room, a different perspective of their own subjective experience. And yet they're all coming from the one which is connected to it. So this is sort of this non-dual concept and exploration. Now, as much as this might be just a bit of mental masturbation talking about these concepts, and you go, well, what's the practicality in this stuff, Maurice? This is great. The practicality is that by taking these concepts on and maybe considering them as a possibility, what you then do is you shift your state, your psychological state. So here's the practical, let's call it practical human mental health stuff, all right? What this does is it gives you a concept that there's something more. It gives you a concept that you're connected to something. It gives you, and maybe the belief that there's a sense of belonging, there's a sense of purpose. Meaning can be attributed in everything. That nothing happens to you, that something is always happening for you. That the brother, the sister that you might have a malice or a hatred toward is actually the same divine spark that you are. These concepts and these belief systems and these felt experiences allow us to connect to others. They allow us to have a greater sense of compassion, a greater sense that we are connected in so many ways. And so there's a greater patience, a greater tolerance as well. So these concepts aren't about separating, they're actually about uniting. And so if you could start to maybe consider maybe adopting some of these, trying them on, see what fits, see what doesn't, and then notice how that then shifts or changes your life. And if you think it changes it for the better, then continue to use it. If it didn't change for the better, then let it go, just like everything. So this is this viewpoint of non-dual thinking, non-dual philosophy, and even non-dual living, because now we then start to see ourselves from a different point of reference. If we only see ourselves as human beings, then it's quite a limited scope, because by the end of it, none of us get out of this alive. Okay, so there's an end date to it, and so now I've got an end date. That means, what do I do until that end date, which I don't know when's going to happen. It could just happen at any moment. It's not a pre-planned, predestined thing, or maybe it is, not too sure. What do I do in that time? So do I have choice? Some of us have choice in certain areas and in control in our lives. So how do I mould this time that I'm here on this planet Earth? Because I only know that I'm here for a period of time, and that period of time could go at any moment. And the interesting thing with, I was listening to Ram Dass recently, and he was talking about the Buddhists would, they practice dying every day. Because they could die any time. And the death exists in the next moment. So when it comes to your door, which it will, how will you meet it? And so they practice this. So when it does come, they meet it with ease and grace, and then they move through the door of death. Rather than pushing it away, covering up, pretending it's not happening, looking at my aging skin and pretending that I'm not aging, that I'm not moving towards it. See how the mind has this natural aversion towards its own death. The mind. This is dualism. So while you're in your mind, while you're in the body, can you get yourself ready for something that is going to 100% be placed upon your path? So this is just a concept, but I thought, oh, that's really interesting, because they get ready for the next moment, death is in the next moment. Now, bringing it back to what we're talking about tonight, is that from a non-dual perspective, you'll hear these words that everything is an illusion. All right? Now, they're so enlightening, and yet they can just destroy you. Because you go, oh, this is happening. Oh, it's okay. It's just an illusion. It doesn't mean that it's really happening yet, but it feels like it's happening. There's a reality to it, but it's just an illusion. So these words can be very much part of spiritual bypass. They can avoid the actual human experience, and we can just go, this is all an illusion, I'm love and light, and I will soon transition to 5D, you know. So we can use these sort of concepts to actually avoid the human experience. Yeah? So when we look at these words, this is all an illusion, there can be a literal term to it. However, what it's based upon is understanding that the illusion is the concept or the belief there is separation. That's what the illusion is. That you're separate from source, that you're separate from love, you're separate from light, that you're separate from another. Because if you recognize and realize that you are connected, that you are one, then you would probably have less harm that you would do to another, because you're seeing the other as a reflection of yourself. It's through the separation. Look at wars. Wars are about separation. Greed is about separation. Control is about separation. Tyranny is about separation. So if any of those behaviours are happening from people, individuals, organisations, what's happened is that they are caught up in the matrix. They are caught up in duality. They are caught up in the illusion of separation. And we're actually taught the illusion of separation from a very, very young age. Because if you're believing that you're separate, then you're easier to control. So this stuff here, where I'm going, you're all connected, this is very threatening to people, organisations, potential governments that want to control. So, heaven forbid we've got a free thinker who believes he's a spiritual being. Holy shit, what are we doing here? So, this dualistic matrix, let's call it, keeps us separate, keeps us in the illusion that we are not connected to something, that we've forgotten our divinity. And we then get caught up in living in the world of matter. Living in a world outside of ourselves, that if I get this, then I'll feel this, rather than this is the vehicle of my own experience of how I've related an interaction with this. Yeah. So we're taught to go outside of ourselves to find something that has always existed within us. Now, there's a beauty to that, because we actually need to go out on the journey forgetting who we are, so we get then to a point and we start to remember who we are, and then we unlearn what we have learnt. And this is this beautiful cycle that we have of childhood development, young adulthood, older adults, and then transitioning. So the human experience is actually designed for that. And that's beautiful. When we start to play around with the non-dual perspective, we then start to recognize that there is particular ways that you can interact with this reality, and then you will then have different results in the reality. And what I'm speaking about here is moving towards this concept that you are the creator of your own reality, and you manifest the physical manifestation of things in your life through the non-physical thoughts and emotions and energy that you create within your non-physical environment, i.e. in your head, in your mind, in your heart, in your emotions. Your non-physical world is so much larger than your physical world. Let's consider this. At this moment, your physical world is only what you can see. And what you can see is where you place your eyes. So my vision is pretty much from there up to there. I don't know if anything's actually behind me. Now, I know you two can potentially see something behind me, but the only reason why you're seeing something behind me because it's in front of you. I can see something behind you, but you can't see what's behind you unless you've got eyes in the back of your head, right? So physically, our actual experience is limited to what we can see. Now, you're probably all thinking, well, Maurice, there's some stairs just over there, and this is where I walked up, and there's a... So see how that's in your non-physical. So consider this, that wherever you go, your physical world will only be what you can see. That is literally it. You don't, as much as you can think that you're on the world, called Earth, and there's another 8 billion people all doing different things, and there's a place called Dubai, and there's a place called London, there's a place called Launceston, and things are happening in those places. It's all happening in your mind. So your world is only what you see. Your physical world is only what you see. What's placed in front of you? So what's placed in front of you, maybe you have actually got a part in placing it in front of you. So if we're considering this from a non-dual lens, now we're going into quantum. We understand that quantum is, the field of possibility. Your intentions and your attention create probability of that possibility being spat out into your field of vision. Whoop, something's there. Wow, how did that get there? Did I have any say in that? I don't know, maybe not. So, we've got this concept, once again, that we've got an internal world and we've got an external world, and maybe the internal world has more to do with what we experience than what we experience has to do with our internal world. That's something to consider. It's really interesting because we think that because we're human beings and when we wake up and we go around and do stuff, we think that this is the main part of our experience. But if you really kept track on yourself, you probably find that your inner worlds are much larger than your outer worlds. So that could then suggest, once again going into non-dual, that you are an interdimensional being. Hang on, does that mean that I can travel through space, Maurice? Yes, it does, Mickey. It sure does. Because you've been there. You've been to different times. You guys travel, you're time travelers. You travel in time each and every day. You've probably already done it while you've been here. Some of you have already left the building. Some of you have gone home and checked out some stuff. Some of you went to the future. Some of you went to the past. All while being here. You're interdimensional beings. You transcend time and space. And you might just think, oh, Maurice, that's just my mind. Could be your mind, and it also could be you becoming aware of your internal worlds. So your internal worlds are really important because they're much larger than your external world. Literally. Your external world is this room at the moment. And maybe what's happening in here, which can be, see how that starts to transcend time and space. What's happening in here. Just be mindful of that. Tonight I want to talk about 3 points of view in relation to the matrix. And the way that this is, I follow a young lady called Elizabeth April. She is right up my alley. Alien stuff, non-dual things, going back to source, remote viewing, just the whole gamut. When I look at this one and I look at how she accesses information, it just sits with me so well. So I'm really aligned with what she's been offering. And this was part of her conversation, and it's also part of my conversation as well, and I thought this would be important to bring to tonight because there's a practical element of this as well. Oh, we're doing well with time, love it. Okay, so this is there's 3 points of view within the matrix, and the matrix is the construct of reality that we live in at the moment. Okay. Movie about it, many conversations around it as well too. So the 3 points of view, I'll call them points of view, points of reference would probably be the best way of describing them. And I'll also use these descriptions in relation to some of the psychotherapies that we offer here at the centre, and some of you are aware of it, so we can sort of give some context to it. So the first level, and this is like if you were playing a video game, okay? So you have the character in the game, you have the player, and then you have the programmer of the game, okay? And so we're going to look at this construct of reality as a simulation like a video game. So the character is Maurice. So I play the character of Maurice, who sits here with these fucking light bulbs going, I'm a fucking guru, whatever it is, okay? So I play this character. This is my character. Right? And it's a beautiful character because it gets to create this place here, and it gets to speak to other characters who are interested in what this character has to say. Okay? Now, if I just identified myself as the character, then my whole success and my sense of identity would be related to how I think you are receiving me. Okay? So now I'm placing my attention outside of myself, and now I can then start to get caught up in a series of anxious thoughts. Oh, what's Jackie thinking about me now? You know, did that make any sense? Oh, what's that look there? Oh, quick mover. You know, so I can get lost into now the experience that exists outside of me. All right. So the character is very reactive to other characters. All right. The character also sort of runs very much on autopilot. Okay, remember, you know, you're not the breather of your breath, and you're also not the thinker of your thoughts. Right? Your autonomic nervous system takes care of your breath. Thank you, breath. But we can impact our breath when we place conscious awareness on it, which is pretty amazing because it's part of the autonomic nervous system, and yet we can impact it with conscious awareness. Right? So you actually don't breathe your breath. Your body's taking care of it. I'm also suggesting to you, you're not the thinker of your thoughts. You think that you're the thinker of your thoughts, but you're more so the awareness of hearing particular thoughts that are controversial or that you want to grab onto or that are pertinent to the moment. So neuroscientists are saying we have between 70 and 80,000 thoughts per day. You don't consciously think about, this is what I'm going to think about. Now I'm going to think about this, now I'm thinking about that, then I'm going to think about this. See, there's no conscious direction of where your thoughts are. However, when you catch a thought, you can then start to guide and direct it. See, it's like your breath. So you're not the breather of your breath, and you're not the thinker of your thoughts. Then what are you? I'm the awareness that notices the breath every now and then. I'm the awareness that notices the thoughts every now and then. All right. Notice I've started to move you into the player. I'm the awareness of the thoughts. I'm awareness of the breath. Because the character is not aware that they don't breathe. They don't think. They think that they are their thoughts, and they think that they are their body. They are fully engrossed into the character that they're playing, which is a beautiful experience for, let's call it soul, let's call it consciousness, that it gets totally lost in the character that it said it would come down and act out in. And some people don't necessarily wake up from the character. They continue to be the character. And however, their character is reactive to other characters. So then they live their lives in a reactionary place, relating or reacting to other characters. So you'll be able to start to recognize this. Now, it doesn't mean you go, oh, I've transcended the character and now I'm the player. No, you're going to move in between these three areas. So it's good to recognize what's my point of reference at this moment in time. From a psychotherapy perspective of internal family systems, we would say that you are the part. Okay? It's a part of you that's frustrated. It's a part of you that's angry. It's a part of you that's suicidal. It's a part of you that's anxious and insecure. You're acting out, you are fully engrossed into the part. Yep. So that's the character. So the character's on autopilot, it's reactive, it's always in chaos and drama. Right? This is how the characters do it. And the way that the character, and these are through April's words, who do I need to be to validate my own existence? So they're very much the chameleon, sort of moving through, and who do I need to be around, what do I need to do so I can have some validation. So see how it's that externalization. So it's an external locus of control rather than an internal locus of control. So that's the character. The player then becomes this, this one that is a little bit more awake. It's awakened to the fact that, you know, I have these emotions that arise at particular times in my life when I'm with particular people. So now this observing self, this awareness starts to come in, and recognize that these emotions and these thoughts, rather than being a slave to them, now we're starting to recognize that they're there and inquire into them and maybe understand the nature and the origin of them, rather than being reactive and being taken away by them. Yeah? So this is, in a sense, self-awareness, as we start to move to self-awareness. So you're not aware of self, then you go into self-awareness. Mindfulness, obviously really beautiful techniques for that. Meditation, really great as well too. Therapy, yes, that can also help. So we're moving into this player. And the player is a really beautiful place because it starts to, it's sort of like the beginnings of enlightenment in a sense. You know, you've got this self-awareness. The full spectrum of enlightenment would be what the Hindus or the Brahmins would call God realization. So you'd have self-realization and then you'd have God realization. Yeah? Sometimes when we go to the void, we get God realization. Right, so now we're tapping into that. So the player is a little bit more awake, a little bit more self-awareness, and has this wonderful awareness, however, is still held to the matrix though, still held to this conceptual reality that we have. And what it's held by is the decision-making process of right or wrong. So it's still in dualism, okay? So it can have this awareness of its own experience, except it's still driven by this judgment to either be right or wrong, always or never. Okay, this is if we looked at it from a love perspective, you know, if we looked at unconditional love, there's just this sense that I see you and everything is perfect. So if we looked at a relationship and a relationship broke up, there would be a greater opportunity of conscious uncoupling, where if there was a more unconditional love held in that space. If there was conditional love, when the relationship breaks up, it then becomes an either or. You know, if you're with me, you love me, but if you're not with me, that means you don't love me, or you've fallen out of love with me. See how love, it has like an expiry date on it, or if you're not in this space, then it's not as much, but if you're in this space, then it's more. Whereas unconditional love is just this, I see you and I see this moment, and you know, can we continue to move through this and have these mature adult conversations? So that's a conscious uncoupling, okay? So, and the reason why I'm saying this, from a player's perspective, the player, as much as they're aware of themselves, would still get caught up in the unconditional. So they haven't fully released themselves from the matrix. Now, if you are not fully released from the matrix, and I don't mean go and live off-grid, okay, you can do that, but you can be connected, stuck in the matrix, imprisoned in the matrix in your mind. You can go and live off-grid as much as you want, but it's in here that you need to go off-grid. Yeah? So to fully release yourself from the matrix, from this reality, from attachment, one needs to let go of the either or. One needs to move into, and you know, other people would call it, you know, in a sense 5D, but one needs to move to this, what they say, objective awareness of that everything is neutral, everything, equanimity, there's value in everything. Okay, so this is the next step to become the programmer. So when you become the programmer, you understand how the reality, or the construct of the reality, is created, and you also understand how you can get lost in that construct of reality and think that you are the identity, think that you are the mind, and think that you are still held to the constraints of that reality. the programmer has this really beautiful opportunity that it is not held to the reality, and yet it can insert itself into the reality because it understands it and it can move with it. Because it also recognizes that the reality that it's moving into is also a reflection of itself. See, because there's no separation. So you've let go, so to get to that space, you need to let go of the concept of separation. If you think that life is separate to you, then you are in separation. If you start to recognize that life is living you, and you are the life that's living you, see how there's no getting away from yourself? And when you can't get away from yourself, that means you're always communicating with yourself. So then life, each and every day, places things upon your path that are reflective of what you are. Now this is a very deep understanding to then sit at, but see how the mind, it stretches the mind to get there? Oh, hang on, Maurice, well, hang on, whoa, slow on that one. I just need to get there first before we get there. So it's this mind reaching to attain this understanding because it's beyond the mind. So now it's even letting go of the mind. The way to enter the door of the programmer is to come to an understanding of, let's call it acceptance and surrender would be some of the things that sit around this concept, but it's mainly around neutrality. So I think on the Hawkins scale of frequency, neutrality sits at around 350, it's a little bit below 400. So it's really not that high, because love is around 500. So it's not way up where enlightenment is, which is 700. Like it's half of enlightenment. So neutrality is really not that hard to get to. Right? It's not unattainable. So what neutrality suggests is that we are able to hold something within our hearts and allow both the positive and the negative full spectrum of that experience to be contained and held, and for that to be okay. Right. Now, I'll use an example of that because that's pretty a broad thing to say. So, my topic, one thing that I would love, okay, and the way that so the reason why I'm bringing this to you is because what I found was that I would be doing these things intuitively. I didn't really understand what I was doing. And this is the way that my life has been, is I'll go and do stuff, and then I'll find evidence of what I'm doing, which then gives me, in a sense, a form of validation for what it is that I'm doing. And I go, oh, wow, that's cool. Like I found cognitive behavior therapy in Buddhism. So I was practicing Buddhism, all of these things, the art of detachment, love and compassion, all that sort of stuff, reframing and everything like that. And then I went into nursing, and then I found CBT, and it was the Western equivalent for Buddhism. I went, holy crap, that's what these guys are talking about. No worries. What I used to do is sometimes when I'd get activated or triggered around something, what I would do is I would take that and I would take it into meditation, and whatever it was, I would then allow that experience to go to its worst possible case scenario. And I would allow my mind to go there. And I would allow my experience to feel the emotions of where the mind was going. And what I found was that I always got to a dead end. I could take something to its nth degree and I would always get to a dead end because it's finite. It's not infinite. It just can't keep on going. It just ultimately gets to the worst possible case scenario. And once I got there, and it would rip me apart internally, but once I got there, I would go, right, I can't go any further. And then the next question that I would ask is, how can I love this? How can I love this? And by asking the question, then you create the catalyst for the answer to arrive at your door. So what I would basically do is, what I say is I collapse the wave. Elizabeth April would say you neutralize it. Okay? So if you ever get this negative thought about something and it just churns you up, you go, oh, what if that's happening and what if that could happen? Yeah. See how we want to push it away? And so by pushing it away, we actually give it more power. We haven't resolved it. We've just pushed it away and we've pumped it up. So then next time it comes back, it's bigger. And we go, holy shit, not you again. Pump it up, push it away. Now, you could continue to do that, but you could also go, what's this that I keep on pushing away? You know what? I'm going to go and sit with this. Let's go. And see, you're doing it on your terms. Now, obviously, you're going to have enough self-energy to do this. Don't do it when you're really fragile, you know, like you're really going to rip into yourself. But if you've got enough self-energy, then allow it. Close your eyes, follow it, feel it. It'll get to an end point, and then you go, how can I love this? Now, the beautiful thing, when you have a non-dual lens of looking at life, you see that everything is love. You see that there's so much perfection in everything. And you see that ultimately, at the end of the day, everything leads you back to where you came from. So if you can just get a grasp of that, that space can be a large container to hold the greatest of suffering. And consider this, that most of your suffering, pretty much, I'd say 80 to 90% of your suffering, is done by you in your head. Yeah. Might be unconscious, might be conscious, but that's happening within your system. So, from these perspectives. So, neutralizing things in your life. Now, when you neutralize something, you then become the master of it because you are not the slave to it anymore. That's ultimately the key. Because your suffering will come from what you are a slave to, something that has, in a sense, possessed you because of your attachment to it either happening or not happening. Doesn't mean that we have to let go of all expectations or anything like that. You can still create expectations, but you know, if you've collapsed the most negative thing that could happen, and even collapse the most positive thing that could happen, then it doesn't hold you anymore. You actually hold it. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be there anymore. Yeah? You're not on the pendulum of it anymore. Because we can sit on the pendulum of I don't like this versus I do like this, but you're still on the whole pendulum of what that topic represents. When you collapse something, when you neutralize it, you've actually hopped off the pendulum. The pendulum is not in your vortex of energy. You don't have to, you can be aware of it, but you're not giving it any more energy because you've already mastered it. You're not a slave to it anymore. So notice what you are a slave to. Notice where your resistance is. Notice where your holdings on to are. And you could use that. The example that Elizabeth April uses is right on one side of the page, love, and the other side, hate. I don't really like to use the word hate, but just as the example. And then write 3 things underneath it that you love, and 3 things underneath it that you hate. The things that you love so much, and the example that she used was pizza. So she loves pizza. So now go to the concept that you will never ever be able to have pizza again. All right? Get to that and go, I'm okay with that. Yeah. So see how she's taken it to that. So let's look at, I love somebody in my, you know, we're in a relationship and I love somebody, but if that person would leave me, then that I wouldn't feel that love. So see how, go to the nth degree of that. Feel it. Not very nice. And then be able to love it. Come to a, I can be okay with that. And once again, you can make up anything in your mind that makes that okay, because that's your world, that's your reality. You're the one who's going to that nth degree. You can fantasize. You can say it's okay. It was a this fellow that was or this person that was interested in me. They actually got abducted by aliens, and they had a new one come in, and that's why that person doesn't want to be with me anymore. Why not? It's your reality. As long as you can neutralize it, humour can be used to neutralize it. The other side of it is, the things that you hate. It's interesting. A couple of you might find this one. Covertness. I don't really like covertness. Sometimes the government's a bit covert. I don't really like the chemtrails that are up in the sky, even though they could be condensation trails, depending on which side of the fence you are. And the other thing that I didn't like or hate is addictions. I've worked in addictions for many, many years, and I just find it, it's a hard road to come back from addiction. It's a hard road. And so when you write these things in that you hate, what you do here to neutralize it is these addictions, and considering what is it that I hate about addictions. It's the insatiable appetite of the addiction that will never ever be satiated. So that's what an addiction is. It's this, the Buddhists call it the hungry ghosts. They've just got this insatiable appetite. They just can't be filled. It just needs more and more and more. So that's this insatiable appetite of addiction. So then to take it to the other end of the people that are experiencing addictions, and maybe even from my own addictions, of what's happening within my life, what would be the opposite of that? Imagine, rather than having this insatiable appetite that could never be filled, that you could be satiated with the feeling that you could never not be filled. See, it's now taking it to the other end. And when you can do that, you then neutralize it. Try it, and then just notice how it feels within you. So when you can start to neutralize these things within your life, that's when you can then step into becoming the programmer. Because when you neutralize these things in your life that are holding you back, that are holding these attachments to you, you reach a place called 0 point. 0 point is the space of neutrality. 0 point is equanimity. It is the stillness of the lake. And from that stillness of the lake, that's where you get to get your pebbles and you create. And then you throw the pebble into the stillness of the lake, and then the ripples appear. You then start to see the ripples coming into your physical manifest world from that space. So you're now creating from a place of non-attachment. You're creating from a place of love, of purity, of seeing clarity. And that's what the programmer's point of view looks like, the point of reference. Now, to sit in the programmer 100% of the time, I don't know, you've got to be pretty enlightened, I reckon. And it's got to be well practiced, because this is like a muscle. There's no physical seat that we're going to go and sit, now I'm in the programmer. These spaces are upon your inner worlds. You recognize them through this experience here. So if you can then start to, just through this conversation, start to recognize, when am I the character? I'm just so lost in this experience that I can't be anything other than the emotions and the thoughts that I am. Oh, I'm the character again. Notice when I say I'm the character again, I've just flipped into the player. Because now the player is recognizing that I'm the character again. See? So now we're shifting. Yeah? Start to notice then that when you're playing, but then you still get caught up in these, I need to do this to feel this. I need to hold on to that for me to still have this. See how things become a possession. Yeah? So I'm the player. When you start to think or consider yourself from the programmer's perspective, you go, oh, there it is again. There's that black and white thinking. There's that all or nothing. There's that dualistic thinking. oh, here's something, oh, maybe I could sit with that. Can I neutralize that? Yeah. And so when you're in that state, you're recognizing you're the programmer who was the player. And so you then start to move and shift between these three areas. Okay. Your way you could look at it is the character is the human experience. The player is the human becoming self-aware. And the programmer is the human becoming aware that it is consciousness having a human experience. So that would be another way of looking at those three things. Cool. I will leave it at that, I think. Once again, lots of information, that's why we record it. I'll close down to these lovely people here, but I will open it up to these lovely people here for any questions, comments. Hello, Jackie.
You know, they say in manifestation you really need to feel the emotion.
Yep.
And almost trick yourself like you have that thing already. And you're in that future. Or
yes.
In that moment. How does that fit with this whole getting into this neutral?
Neutral, yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you're, good question. A couple of ways I want to go there. So 0 point actually doesn't have any emotion, which I find interesting because there's nothing to attach to, right? So you're actually creating from a point which is, in a sense, above emotion. Yeah, so it's clear. So it becomes a lot more crisp because sometimes our emotions are can be diluted and also blended as well. So it's a different place to create from. So you can become the player who's self-aware, who's manifesting, but you're still manifesting from ego. Yeah. When you have the programmer awareness, you can manifest from 0 point and you can also manifest from emotion as well. But when you're manifesting from emotion, the emotion is clearer and cleaner because it's not coming from fear. Yeah. Because it's like that my will versus thy will. So like I found manifesting quite easy, and I could manifest large amounts of money. I could manifest pretty much whatever I wanted. I'd manifest it. Okay, and I quickly found that this is, I won't say too easy, but it was quite boring. Right, so and that was because my ego had worked out that if I get this, this is what I want to manifest, and now I've got it. Okay, well, I've got that now, but now I don't want it. See, it was the hungry ghost again. So the hungry ghost learned how to manifest. The awareness then started to come in and go, we don't want to do this. We've done this enough lifetimes. Let's, rather than you deciding what you want to manifest, Maurice, why don't you let life decide? And so now there's this beautiful element of trust, of just going, okay, where is it that I need to go? Life lived me to my highest potential. And so now all I do is listen, rather than, in my listening I am creating, and rather than this is what I want to manifest because of this, that sort of thing. It's an interesting space, and I won't say that I'm fully thy will, you know, I'm still in the my will part of it. It's probably just more so the cleaner the frequency, I find, from because when you're in 0 point, you know, there's no attachment to anything. You just go, what do you want? Oh, this is what I'd like. And you consider the frequency. So it's not the material thing, it's the frequency of what it is that you want to feel. Because I don't need more stuff. I literally don't need more stuff. You know, what I do want is I want connection. So I want fulfillment, I want contentment, I want calm, I want peace, I want clarity. Like I don't. So see how the my will is possessions, so I can feel that. If I get that, then I'll feel that. The thy will, or the cleaner my will, in a sense, is come and go, what's the frequency you want to feel? Because it's more so what you want to feel. And then what happens, and this is, so when you manifest from frequency, it will happen quicker than if you try to manifest a matter. Right? So say you all said, I want to manifest $1 million. So you could say that. But what you're doing is that once you place something within your manifest that has matter, you're also attaching to it all of the thoughts that you have around it. Oh, well, how's that going to happen? You know, I've tried this before. That's just ridiculous. Or, oh, that's not enough. I can have more. So see, you as much as the $1 million is there, all of the thoughts, all of the beliefs, all of the conditioning that's attached to it now is attached to what you're manifesting. So it's going to take longer. Whereas if you tapped into the frequency of the $1 million, what does that mean? Give me some freedom. Ah, okay. Freedom to what? Freedom to be myself. Oh, okay. So freedom, liberation, authenticity. So now I just go to the frequency of freedom, liberation, and authenticity. I don't need to manifest $1 million so I can feel that. Oh, I'm just tapping into it now. And then what life does is it places things upon your path that are representative of the frequency that you're inviting. See how we're allowing life to put it into form rather than us telling life, this is the form that I want so I can then feel this. We're saying, you know, I'd really love to feel this. And it goes, I've got the perfect thing for you. Pop out. In your field of view, which is your physical reality. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah.